filmed on a shoestring budget somewhere in the bowels of Richmond. It's time for Let's Get Drunk and Talk About It with your host, Nate Peterson.
All right, well, let's start the show.
Absolutely.
This is Let's Get Drunk and Talk About It. My name's Nate. This is Richard Mar. Okay, who runs the, what is it, RVA poll?
RVA Politics, yeah.
RVA Politics, okay. And you're also a professor?
At Randolph-Macon.
Okay, awesome. And you teach?
Political science.
Political science, all right.
That's it, yeah.
And this is Don Moss running for council in this district, the 6th district. So let's get started with an introductory shot.
Oh, yes.
This is 99 butterscotch. It'll be fun.
The drink of kings.
Yes.
All right, let's get drunk and talk about it.
All right.
That was a couple fellas.
Yeah. Oh, God, butterscotch.
Oof.
Oh,
That is
I would
butterscotch.
regret that.
I'm already sorry that happened.
Oh.
Oh, man. Not the man I once was.
It's okay, you got a good chaser.
Hey,
That is fiery.
all right.
Okay, let's get some discussion going. Let's talk about the recent disappearance of Michelle Mosby. We'll later be joined by Jon Baliles, and I'm not sure what he'll say about it. He's friends with her, but Michelle Mosby hasn't been at the last few forums. Morrissey made a quip recently at the forum, and he said, "My friend Michelle Mosby told me he was at the other unit at VSU." So where has she been? I actually saw her on Facebook, and I asked her because she posted on the news article and said, "Look, Joe Morrissey lies again. I never told him that." I'm sure it was a joke, but still, and I asked her like, "Hey, where were you?" and got no reply.
Yeah.
Anybody know where she was or where she's been?
On that particular occasion, no.
No, I haven't been tracking her movements.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she's just figured that she's not getting much out of this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't blame any of the mayor candidates for not wanting to show up to yet another forum.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a council candidate. I've had 7.
Yeah.
I have one more left before the election's there. And to be totally frank with you, I love talking to folks. I love talking about policies and my plans and hearing from everybody. But the questions do get a little repetitive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially for the mayoral candidates, they've had,
yes.
I mean, almost 25, the 25 forums total, I think, scheduled for the entire.
Yeah, that's a long time.
And that's too many. I mean, from every interest group, every policy advocacy, everything is having a forum for them.
Yeah.
So I can understand why it's getting tedious, but I also feel like it's bad form not to show up.
It's sort
Because
of
then everybody notices, especially if you're the only one.
Yeah.
It'd be one thing if it was like, her and Lawrence Williams and John don't show up, or LeVar doesn't show up to one forum, but she's the only one who hasn't been showing up to the last few. So that makes her stand out.
And the weird thing is, like, she's not doing this at the same time that she goes after Joe Morrissey, right?
Yeah,
with her radio ad.
Yeah.
So that suggests, there's some strategy behind what she's doing. If she's thinking like, I have to be the one to take on Morrissey, but then at the same time she's not showing up to the debates to either like do more of it. I don't know. I mean, it's hard with these small campaigns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that she's got, haven't seen, good campaign staff are expensive.
Yeah.
But, I'm very lucky that a lot of my close personal friends are campaign staff. And for years, so all my campaign staff, my staffing costs are free. But, if I was her, and I know Michelle, a council president, excuse me, and I've actually been really impressed with a number of things that she's done. But I'm sure she's knocking doors. That's what I do. That is what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I knock doors in the morning, I knock doors in the afternoon, I knock doors today. Because from her point of view, I hesitate to put words in anybody's mouth, but she's got, I've done 40 of these things.
Yeah.
Right? And I need to be out in my district, knocking doors, talking to people, saying, I'm Michelle Mosby, here's my plans, my policies, how can we move forward as a city, rather than sitting in front of, another group answering the same 70 questions. But I agree, I think you gotta be there. I mean, I definitely, there's been one or two.
I mean, I understand that it sucks. Like, I understand it. And even, like, the newspaper articles are saying, like, this is just an immense amount of forums. And
so many.
Yeah, you do sometimes get more traction by meeting people in person than you do by having these events over and over again. But yeah, like I said, also it just makes a big difference if you're the only one who's not showing up, because then the papers say Michelle Mosby did show up.
Yeah, you don't want to give the already overworked political press here an easy lie. Yeah, so it's just Ned and Mark. Well, and you technically.
I'm not something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, do you think she's going to drop out, though?
No.
You don't think she is?
Oh, my, no. What?
What?
I don't know what the point would be at this point.
My scenario would be everyone drops out except John and Joe, but that's never going to happen. But
you should tell him that when he gets here.
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. It kind of feels like that's what I was thinking at first, but you don't think she would at all.
I can't. I mean, at this point,
What does she gain by
3
it?
weeks out. Well, I mean, what's the point? I mean, I could see. I don't think she would do this, and I can't imagine that anybody would advise her to. I mean, you could just go dark. Campaigns done before. That's sort of like what Pence did, like a week or two ago. Just for their sake, I'm not doing this.
Just not
let this go over. She could be like, okay, well, but there's no compelling evidence. If someone who's worked on the other side, you got your theorist here, your applied theory, I guess, over here, and I worked in the Democratic Party for a number of years, and it is very difficult to get good polling in a small district, especially for a down ballot race. Which I mean, I'm even below them, so I would never commission a poll because I would have to pay $40,000 and talk to 3,000 people to get anything even useful, which would be that's a third of my vote total. I mean, there's no compelling argument for anyone to get out, except for possibly, well, I don't say that, but what if you and your students were gaming this out? I mean, what would your thought be?
If Mosby actually has the sort of least good rationale for dropping out, because she stands more in the way of Morrissey, and less in the way of any of the other candidates than anybody else. I mean, it would make more sense, like in terms of gaming it out, like what do you have to gain from dropping out? Well, if John threw his support to one of the other candidates, right, then he'd have a lot to gain, or same for either LeVar or Jack. Whereas Mosby, like, if she drops out, her supporters are going to go vote for Joe Morrissey, which apparently she doesn't want,
So you think the demographics her demographic only overlaps with Joe's, really?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it, his district. And
I tell you, it's so hard to tell.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing is
voter ID and preference this low down. That is really hard.
Well, which is why you have to you make assumptions about the obvious demographic stuff like race, right?
Yeah.
And that's the easiest one to make an assumption on. And in some cases it's going to be overestimating. But you just look at the breakdown of racial demographics in the 9 districts, and the ones that are majority black are going for Morrissey,
right, and
the ones that aren't are going for somebody else. So it just based on that, you would think that Mosby doesn't have a rationale for dropping out. You're right, though. It's really hard to get good data on these like tiny little samples, these tiny little groups.
215,000 people and 90,000 registered voters feels about right. I mean, that's tiny.
Maybe.
That's nothing. I run 2 congressional districts for a campaign in Utah, and that's 90,000. That's a town. And, whatever. We'll find on the other end. But I mean, it speaks to. There was a point we had 18 some candidates, way back in the beginning. It shows how dissatisfied and fractured the city is, and that's disappointing. We're starting to burnish our image as a city that's all squared away and put together. But, the reality of it is, on the back end, it's a tire fire on top of a brothel in many ways.
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah.
Put that on a campaign poster.
It's a tire fire on top of a brothel.
It's going on the mailing.
Well, I feel like what the state of the race is right now is you pretty much have, it's pretty much Morrissey versus everybody else. And I feel like we really have, because they're all kind of overlapping the demographics. I mean, Lamar Stoney has kind of the establishment Democrats. Jack Berry has businesses on his side. Jon Baliles has the, kind of like Richmond is weird kind of group. The
Richmonders.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's great. I mean, I don't mind it obviously. I'm just very vocal in my support. But he kind of, a lot of the restaurants are for him, a lot of the Camel.
I'd say, like New Richmond versus Old Richmond, right?
Exactly, and he's trying to keep it cool. And Barry is very much the business. And don't get me wrong, but I feel like Jack Berry would make a better CAO than a mayor. That pays more.
He's certainly got the skill set. That's also true.
Maybe he should drop out and just become the CAO.
We'll just tell the guy who's got 30% of the vote locked up and drop out. I think I'm gonna let you make that call. But I will totally listen.
Oh, Zach.
Someone's at the door.
God.
I really hope that's John. Perfect timing. Welcome, John. Glad you can make it.
Appreciate it.
Did you want to take a shot?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Good. All right. You got a big night ahead of you tomorrow. I
That's right.
understand.
Yeah.
Gotta
Yeah,
stay
this
level-headed.
This is not good stuff.
It's much harder for us to have to watch it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep drinking. That's right.
So you've got the debate coming up in Altria Forum tomorrow. The Altria my old debate tomorrow. Are you excited?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Big night.
What do you think about the recent poll that showed? Well, they didn't even in the article they didn't even mention you, which I was kind of sad about. They said there's the top 3, and I know you were 4. I know you were 4. I know you were right now.
Better than 5th.
It's true. Do you think that's gonna go up with this forum?
I don't know. I've never believed in polls, and as far as I know, there's never been a Baliles in a poll that's ever been ahead. So, we just got to keep on grinding.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha. So we talked about this a little earlier. What's your take on Mosby not being president at the last few forums? Have you missed her?
well, I hear different stories, and I think she's focusing on making sure that she's winning the 9th district come election day.
Yeah.
So I think that's what she's focused on, and I'll be honest, there has to be something done about all these forums.
Yeah.
I mean, there should literally, for mayor, there should be 1 forum a week in each district, and anybody that's interested in that district should get together and come together. Neighborhood associations, business people, but having 3 forums a week is ridiculous. It robs the people of the opportunity to see the mayor candidates in person, and something's got to be done about it. And whether I win or not, I will do my damnedest to do something about it in 2020.
Organize people about that.
It's ridiculous.
I like
it's
the theme
absolutely
ones.
ridiculous.
The theme ones. I like the arts one was a great idea. Like focus on a particular theme is good. But yeah, I mean,
we were talking a little earlier about forum fatigue. It's just it's a justified reason not to go. It just looks bad when she's the one who's not showing up.
you need like a commission on debates,
yeah,
kind of like at the national level, except not as corrupt, which would be good.
I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah, there's just far too many going on.
Because more people could be reached door to door than can be through these forums.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's an exception because it's televised, so you'll probably have thousands of people that watch
Yeah.
Right.
through the stream or online or over the air. But other than that, having 3 forums a week is.
You know who'd be really good at organizing that? Jack Barry.
We were just talking about how we make a great CAO. With the business acumen, the city planning experience. Mm-hmm. We should appoint him then.
That sounds like a good plan.
Perfect. Let's settle then. Jack Barry, don't vote for him for mayor. He'll just be in charge of the debate commission for 2020.
That's a great idea.
He's a great planner. We'll make sure he's on that. Settled. Well, excellent. Have you been doing some debate prep? You got some good zingers?
Oh, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
For him. I mean, do you have a plan when you go in there? Or is it more like you're just going to be prepared for
You're
whatever
just so well versed in
questions?
the issues that any question they pose is good for you.
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean,
Yeah.
from an experience standpoint, in government in the last 10 years, there's nobody that comes close to having as much experience in government as I do.
Okay.
Been in the mayor's office, been on the staff level, been on the legislative side of things, seen all the dirty card tricks that have tried to been played, seen all the legislation that's come through, it's having that knowledge and knowing what works and what doesn't, and being able to kind of apply that to how we can get things accomplished as opposed to what's politically popular or how can we ram this down people's throats. I think that's key for the next mayor.
So then the other thing for me that I'm always interested in campaigns is the whole narrative thing. Mm-hmm. Like what's the story you want to tell about yourself? Is that what you and your folks think about? Like we want to tell a story about Jon and this is how we tell the story, or is it?
Well, I know Alan does a lot of that stuff for you too. Alan's always posting about you on Facebook and pictures of when you were younger, and he talked about last episode we actually had him on. He talked about how your 5th birthday was when your father was elected governor.
No, it was when he got elected to the House.
Okay. Yeah.
It was 15 when he got elected governor, but a lot of that, a year after that, after he got elected governor, I swore off politics because I hated it. Growing up in it, it's a little different, and being in that fishbowl. But then, funny thing happened along the way, which I bought a house and got involved in my neighborhood, and that led to being a citizen advocate, and that led to working for Doug Wilder and being inside City Hall. So, it does go full circle.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's as much of it's not a formula or anything. It's just the fact that I'm born and raised here, and I've never seen the city better poised to be what I always thought it could be. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, people were like, "Oh my God, you're from Richmond? What a horrible place." And I was like, "You just don't know the Richmond that I know. I know what Richmond can be." And here we are 20-some years later, and we're almost there. When 20 years ago, people would say, "Oh my God, it's the murder capital of the country. It's a horrible place. It's dirty. It's crime-ridden." All of these horrible things that people talked about Richmond, and now everybody's like, "Oh man, I love Richmond. I want to go into the city. I want to be in the city. I want to live in the city." It's coming, but a lot of the problems that were there when I was a kid are still there. We've got to the way I framed it the other day was this. The next mayor has to be prepared to do the hard work, so the mayor who gets elected in 2024 gets all the credit. Because that's what it's going to take to turn the city around. The schools are not going to get turned around in 2 or 3 years. It's an 8, 10, 15-year project. Poverty is not going to get reduced in 3 or 4 years. So if you're shooting for those short-term goals and trophies, then you shouldn't be running for mayor.
Right. It's like the one thing that Jones has actually done that's good, or maybe he's done more. But the one thing I really like that he's done is the Office of Community Wealth Building. Right. This is a thing that Jones is getting no credit for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's getting a lot of credit.
Well, I don't know that he's getting enough credit for it. I'll put it that way. But it's exactly the kind of long-term investment play that doesn't get rewarded very well in politics, right? I think it's interesting that I don't know why it took him so long to do it. But.
Well, and you would think the Anti-Poverty Commission was conducted in this first term. Office of Community Wealth Building didn't come around until the 2014 budget. It was 2013, but 2014 budget. Mm-hmm. So it took a while to get going. But on the flip side, there's absolutely no way to reduce poverty without improving education.
Yeah.
Forget about it. And to say that 11% of the people have people enrolled in public schools, to take that kind of mentality is absolutely wrong. So he deserves credit for the Office of Community Wealth Building, but he deserves scorn for just tossing the schools aside. Yeah. Because you can't do it with one or the other. Education's not going to do it alone either. You've got generations of people that can benefit from the Office of Community Wealth Building that we didn't educate first go around. And we need to do that.
And just for the viewers who are uninformed, the Office of Community Wealth Building does what exactly?
Well, it does a lot of things. It helps people find jobs. It matches maybe particular skill sets with improving their job skills. One of the examples is the welding program, which in its first iteration, I believe, found 48 people jobs. And you're talking about welding jobs that you can't outsource to China, and they're paying $45-50 grand a year.
That's good for Richmond.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 18, maybe 20 of them were former offenders. So these are people that deserve a second chance and got one, and now they're productive members of society with a good job and a good pay, and bringing their families along with them. So, I mean, that's the type of thing that you need to enhance, because those are the people that went through the school system, and some of them didn't get the education they deserved.
Yeah.
So we need to do more to help them. And that's why education's important. Education's important for the kids coming up today. Office of Community Wealth Building very often is helping the parents that didn't get the education. But that doesn't mean they can't have a skill and a good life and a good job.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've been asked this at a few of the events. I mean, there's been so many of them. I haven't had time to read all of your answers, but what would you do? Because I guess one of the big concerns, especially for me when I ran for mayor briefly, was how do you get people back from the suburbs to come back to downtown? I mean, obviously schools are a big part of that, but I mean, how do you get people to move back who've kind of white flighted over to Henrico or Chesterfield?
Well, I don't know if there's a strategy for that other than making the city as good as it can be.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people that are empty nesters whose kids go off to college and they grew up here or they lived here and they were part of the flight, and they're coming back, and that's great. But the goal is to have an education system. When I was running in 2012, I would knock on so many doors of young parents that either had young kids or were planning on starting a family, and they wanted to stay in the city and to be able to make sure that they felt their kids could get a good education. You want them to make the investment so that they stay here for 20 years. But there's also a whole big chunk of the city that doesn't have the option to move if it comes to that.
Yeah.
So there's two reasons why you have to have a good education system. People that may not have means to move to the county if they're worried about their kids' education, but also you don't want people to leave. But all of that helps the city in the long run.
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer. It's just a long-term solution.
Yeah.
And that usually doesn't play well in the world of short-term politics.
What do you think of the odds for it? So partially, you're working on this even right now as part of City Council, right? The whole Roanoke 40 plan, this whole idea about trying to dedicate a stream of funding for them. And I know I've talked to Garrett Pryor's one of the people who's trying to get this thing pushed on right now. So the idea is that there might be a vote. They're really trying to get it done now. Is there any chance that that's actually going to happen?
It's possible. They pushed the Redskins deal through in 2 months. So, let's rank our priorities here.
Yeah.
Is a steady funding stream for schools more important than a Redskins training camp or not?
Yeah, well, maybe you could put a football around somehow. Just wave a football around.
I think when it comes down to that, that's what we're going to be looking at, is which is more important. And the idea that a new council and a new mayor come in January and they are bound by law to set aside a percentage, even if it's a gentleman's agreement, just have an agreement that we focus on budget priorities that are in other realms, but let's just put things like public safety in schools kind of not necessarily off limits, because you never know what the budget's going to be year to year, but put them in an area or a category where you say, okay, we're not going to be contentious about this. The schools are okay with, if the schools are okay with what they're getting and the administration's okay with what they're getting and everybody has a little shared sacrifice, why pick a fight? Worry about, okay, can we do leaf collection twice a year? All right, we may only have to do it once a year. Worry about those things later. They're so insignificant in terms of the long run that and being on council the last 4 years, it's absolutely exhausting. Some of these.
Don't tell me that.
Man, get ready. Start sleeping, man.
Drop out while you can.
It's too late.
It is exhausting to go through this. We fight and waste so much energy over the most innocuous of things. If you think about, we spent 7 months, $1 million, and thousands of staff hours arguing about baseball. And we spent, I don't know how many hours over the last 3 years arguing and worrying about school funding. And, it's just, we waste energy on absolutely the wrong things.
Believe me, I know. You should go to a faculty meeting.
I can only imagine, but I got enough on my plate.
So just a quick question for you. There's been a lot of hubbub about getting the Lumpkins jail area as kind of like a slave memorial. And they've got an architect lined up for it as well. Is that something you support as mayor, making that area of the Richmond downtown monument to the slave trade?
Absolutely. Before the Lumpkins thing, before the baseball thing came about, and I'd like to point out the fact that part of the baseball plan was we can't have a memorial at Lumpkins jail without a baseball stadium next to it, which the city pays $80 million for. And then all of a sudden, last Monday, here we are groundbreaking for Lumpkins, and the baseball stadium's off the table. So obviously, what they fed to us was what. But going back to 2011,
and by they fed to us, you mean Jack Barrett?
the administration or ballpark supporters,
right?
To be named later.
To be named later. But when I was secretary of the Public Art Commission in 2010 and 2011, one of the things that we came up with, we had to kind of remind the administration that they were building the Justice Center, a $130 million project, and they hadn't set aside 1% for public art, which is $1.3 million. And they're like, ooh, uh-oh. So they had to kind of figure out what they were going to do. And the ordinance for public art says that you don't have to spend the money at the site of the capital project, meaning the Justice Center, but you could spend it near. So our proposal was for a huge sculpture park where the burial ground is, the old parking lot that VCU turned back over to the city. Something along the lines of what they've done in New York City and Amsterdam, where there's this really powerful big statue, and then you can have all kinds of interpretive things around it. And that was, I'm not saying that was the genesis, but that was the thing that kind of reminded people that A, public art is important, but B, so is this site.
Yeah.
And how do we memorialize it? And then 2 years later, the baseball thing came around, and then they started talking about Lumpkins. But the Public Art Commission was the group that raised the flag that said, "Hey, this site is important. We need to memorialize it somehow."
Yeah.
And so I think we do, and how we get there should be a community conversation. And I think we'll have a mayor, whoever it is, that is a little bit more agreeable to public dialogue and input than the current one, and that'll be a good thing. The group that's taken this project under hand, I can't remember their name, Smith JJR, I believe.
It was the architects who designed the
one
African American History
in
Museum
DC,
in DC.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I talked with them a little bit at the groundbreaking, and they seem really top flight, and I think that's good. But they're also of the mind that nothing's concrete yet, and so that's good,
Yeah.
because I think the city's had enough of top down. This is the way it's going to be, and it's now time for more ground up.
Yeah.
Let's get the people who made the Arthur Ashe monument.
Lord.
Yeah.
Let's bring that in.
That'd be nice.
I love Paul. Don't make fun of Paul. I think it's a good. I know people make fun of the statue, but I think it's good. I just think it's too small for the base. The base is big, and the statue's small. But I don't know who was in charge of that, but
Yeah.
I like it. And I
Okay.
don't think Arthur Ashe is hitting the kids with his tennis ball.
Okay.
I don't. I really don't. I've never seen that.
You may be in the minority.
I think so.
I guess.
I think maybe you see what you want to
My
see.
glass
there,
is
John.
half full.
All right, that's good.
The happy warrior.
What are your opinions? I mean, obviously, Joe recently reneged on his, destroy the Jefferson Davis statue. But let's say in a perfect world where state law didn't prohibit it or there weren't other barriers to get rid of it. If you could replace the Jefferson Davis statue with anything, what would it be?
Well, my position on it is that we continue to grow Monument Avenue that shows the growth and maturity of the city. If I was to render my opinion, I would say put Maggie Walker at Hamilton, put Oliver Hill at Malvern, put Doug Wilder at Westmoreland, and then leave the last intersection in the city of Monument Avenue at Staples Mill for somebody that we don't know should be memorialized yet. It may be a Hispanic person, it may be LGBTQ, who knows? But show the growth and maturity of the city as you go west on Monument. But put every statue in context.
Yeah.
Explain why the Lee Monument went up. Explain why all these things were put up. And they were put up for reasons that were re-glorifying, the Civil War 50, 60 years later. And you can have that debate all day long, but my contention is that you have some type of discussion with people that know the subject and people that can lead, like Ed Ayers from University of Richmond and Doug Wilder.
Yeah.
People that are respected, but also have the history and the knowledge. And it's certainly, grandstanding press conferences aside, it is not the unilateral decision of a mayor to do anything on Monument Avenue.
Yeah.
Period.
It's also important to remember that the state will not allow you to tear those things down.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the thing is,
There's
I
a
feel like
village's path. Yeah, actually,
Dylan
specifically
Roll.
to stop this sort of thing. And actually, I agree with you, John. I've wanted for a long, long time to put large placards at each one. Saying, so, okay, you're standing in front of, this vaguely Beaux Arts, Napoleon-esque statue of Lee looking like he's coming out and really kick some ass. Why is this here? Well, there's an interesting story.
Wow.
And a lot of those spaces are so large, you can do almost like a quasi-interpretive garden kind of thing.
Sure.
Like step one, causes of the war. Step two, who was Lee? Step three, the loss of the war. Step 4, the post-Bellum Reconstruction era. Because we don't talk about Reconstruction anywhere as much as we should in the city. I think we should.
No, I agree.
And then because that was not a pleasant time really for anyone. Just everybody got the wrong end of that. And then you could even tag it so it went all the way through. You could throw up a website, throw QR codes on everything. Make it a whole. And honestly, you should start down at the John Smith Cross and the New Lumpkin site. Here's Richmond. Here's the whole story. Because Richmond's story, our history, our narrative, is America.
Very much
A
so.
couple of English guys showed up. This looked like a pretty good idea. We started a city. We named it, and a whole bunch of other stuff happened. And now here you are. And in fact, it actually would be kind of cool, John, if we put at that final site on Staples Mill a to be determined.
Sure.
I think that would be really neat. Like with that, I think that would acknowledge.
you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't count on it.
Or
John.
Yeah. John
John.
gets here and cleans everything up, and I run for mayor.
You're the guy getting the credit. That's you're getting the credit. That's it.
John who, I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to make some of Monument a little more pedestrian friendly to do that, right? I mean, part of these monuments are designed to just scare you as you drive past them on your way to the north, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a northern transplant. I've only been in Richmond like 6, 7, 8 years now. And so I have this, thank you. I've heard that. That's part of my introduction to the city. But I mean, I have very little tolerance for Confederate, heritage not hate argument. I mean, I tell my students this, and some of them are, flying Confederate flags in their
And like
windows.
I said, please bring them on the show. I would love
Yes,
to consider
yes.
people more often.
And I probably should be more tolerant, but it's just it's. I mean, for me, I'm kind of like the comedian who was on the NPR, I think, was telling a story, and he's like, look, I don't put my losing lottery tickets up all over the place. This is a second place prize. What are you doing this for?
That's a pretty good way to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean, we never
I just,
glorified a loss in a war so heavily.
Yeah.
We don't have
Well,
a statute in
yeah.
exactly. It's just,
Well,
it's stupid.
But whether you remove them or not, I mean, I think you're right. At least the context about it, at least the idea, like this is not going back 150 years. It's going back 50, and there was a specific reason these statues were put up here, and it has nothing to do with celebrating the Confederacy. So. Well, just you can't whitewash that part of Richmond's past. Yeah.
That's why it needs to be explained.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
watching, the right movement, the far right movement, rear its head in Europe is, I think, an excellent reminder that these things don't go away.
Yeah.
Not to bring national politics into it. There's an element of that in the Trump campaign.
Yeah.
I think it would be really helpful if future generations could see where this has been before.
Well, I mean, they tried to deny history. A lot of conservatives. I mean, you see some of these really conservative states like Oklahoma that are trying to destroy parts of history. That are trying not to teach the parts of history that make America unexceptional or glorify our
The
past.
thing you have to understand is there's all kinds of history that's ugly, and to not remember that makes you easy prey for it to happen again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why it needs to be remembered. That's why it needs to be taught. That's why it needs to be put in context, because otherwise it will happen again. And that's been repeated God knows how many times over the centuries.
Right.
It's nothing new.
Right.
But I do like this idea of adding rather than subtracting, right?
I think showing a sign, one of the things that I'm so proud of is I've been here all of my life, and in the last 10 years, I've learned more about the slave trade and things that have happened in the city that are the ugly parts of the city's history that, as a lifelong resident, I didn't know. I mean, I knew the Lumpkins jail story because my mom's been on the board of union for 25 years, but other than that, didn't know a whole lot about it. And it wasn't taught. It wasn't even talked about. And now it's openly talked about. It's openly researched, and we're all learning and we're all growing. That's why I think Monument Avenue can show the growth of the city, which I remember when Ash went up and there was all this discussion, and it was like, really? I mean,
Yeah.
It was a fight.
Confederate Americans.
Yeah.
well, it was more than that, but it was a fight that today I don't think would occur nearly to the level that it did. There was a protest when they put the statue of Abraham Lincoln in, down at Tredegar, and it was if you look at history, ironically enough, and I mention this to people, I've done a ton of reading about, kind of become an Abraham Lincoln file in the last 10 years. The only capital that a U.S. president has ever walked through after it was defeated is Richmond, and it was Abraham Lincoln, and that's it. Nobody else. Nobody walked through Berlin. Nobody walked through London. Nothing. The only city that's ever been walked through by, and he did not come, and he mentioned this specifically. If you look back at the text, he did not say, hey, stick it to them. He said, let them up easy. Don't put your boot on their neck. We're brothers again. This is over. It's time to heal. And it's really, really tough to think about what would have happened had he stayed president. But that's neither here nor there. But it's important to remember that he visited Richmond not as a conqueror, but as a healer. Some people won't accept that, and that's fine. But
too bad with Andrew Johnson. My grandfather always said. Texan. Long Southern history in my family.
Yeah.
But I think especially here we have, we've got a transplant, right? Richmonder.
Kind of a transplant.
Okay, that's your art too. And not even 30 minutes into this, we're discussing, one of my. I've often considered myself to be Richmond's personal tourist service. I've been dragging people here for years. I love Richmond. I came here to be a punk rock star when I was 17. I failed miserably. But I was going to be better than Fugazi, which I realize now is really foolish to do at times. But it doesn't take that long for a mayoral candidate and a political theorist, and a professor, and a city council candidate to get right back to the roots of everything, which is there's a bright red line down the middle of the city. And the more we squabble about this stuff, and we've squabbled about it for a long time, the worse that we look, not just to our citizens, but to everybody else. Totally. I mean, I like the tree. It's always nice to have live eggs. But surely Maggie's of that kind of stature. The fact that we still argue about things like this shows that we are more divided than we ought to be. In Richmond, I say this in my son's speech, this is a hell of a town. Yeah. And we need to acknowledge everything, because I tell you, the kids who are 10 years younger than me, I'm 32, and the 19 and 20-year-olds, they have no patience for this stuff. Yeah. No patience for it. I mean, the Confederate American thing, no interest in that. Any kind of world that isn't very open and honest and fair and free, they've got no time for that. And if we want Richmond to continue attracting these kids, which have given us all the wonderful growth that we've had, we've got to get beyond all this. Yep. And honestly, I'd love to see the 1% go to 2%, as John. A real fight getting it through. But I'd love to see it, because I think we should have statues on all the roundabouts. I think we should finish down Monument Avenue. I think that there should be more work done down at Browns Island. I mean, there needs to be more commemorative stuff, more commemorative pieces, so that everywhere that you go, you're confronted with little tidbits of Richmond history. Because we've been here for 400 some years. And there's a lot that's happened.
And I'll make the case that there's no more historical a city than Richmond. I'll put us up against Boston, Philadelphia, and any others. And you're right. Exploring that history, good, bad, and the ugly, to anybody that comes here shows that we have grown and accepted, and we're not telling one story that we want to tell. We're telling the entire story, and that shows a city that is good with itself, or getting better with itself.
Yeah, they can look in the mirror and accept it, right? Because Richmond is the eternal chip on this shoulder city.
Yep, that's a good way to put it.
We're very quick. I even catch myself. I like to think of myself as a pretty friendly and tolerant guy. Real quick, especially about the towners. Like, what's with all this Confederate stuff? Like, why don't you go to hell? Let's just get right out of here, okay? Stop at some of our excellent, craft beer stores, and then go. Okay, all right, but. Yeah, I think if you go to Atlanta, for instance, or even Birmingham, which I spent a lot of time in, Chattanooga, all these other southern cities, mid-size or large size, a lot of these things, if you talk to civic leaders there, it's like, well, I'm still fighting about this. We dealt with this. Now we're growing and moving on and dealing with it. But Richmond's still.
We're kind of just on the highlight reel. We have all the the parts we like to glorify. We we have the Browns Island. We have that bridge that goes out that shows when the burning of Richmond happened. And
it's cool.
I mean, I like it. It's just like that's all the good bits. It's not. It doesn't. It glosses over the how we destroyed Black Wall Street and how city planning turned against the African American population for many years.
You guys want to read a really, really powerful book. It's a book written in the early to mid '80s by Christopher Silver, who worked I think he was a professor at VCU. it's called Race Planning and Politics, Richmond in the 20th Century. And it goes
Oh,
back
I've seen
to
that
like
book, yeah.
It goes back to like Harry Pollock turned me on to it 10 years ago. And goes back to about 2000 and early World War I era. And it shows the progression of Richmond's thinking and planning, and how, for instance, Navy Hill, over where the Coliseum used to be, Gamble's Hill, which is where Newmarket, Ethel is. Those areas, Fulton, used to look. They all used to look like the Fam.
Yep.
And they got bulldozed
They
for,
were.
Various purposes, you can guess. But it also talks about things like the placing of 95 through Jackson Ward, and this is the fascinating thing. They put it to the route that they chose, or the routes that they offered, was one where it is today through Jackson Ward, which displaced, I think, 900 homes. And then there was one that went up north side, kind of near where you are, up kind of Mechanicsville Turnpike area.
Yeah, up where it flattens out. I've seen the maps.
Dill Avenue up that way. And and think about this, this is in the 50s, when most of South Richmond was Chesterfield County, so you're not counting the Richmond that is today.
Yeah.
Out of the 1950s vote, which was still Byrd era massive resistance, so the black community didn't have the powerful vote that they later got, 90+% in both referendums said, take the northern route, don't destroy Jackson Ward. And the city leaders
Still went ahead and
of
did
the
it.
city, no, what they did was even more nefarious.
This is crazy, actually.
They said, we're going to kick it to the state to decide.
Yep.
The state decided to create the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike Authority, and because it was a state authority, it was not subject to a local referendum, and they got to choose the route, and they destroyed Jackson Ward.
It took 7-8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Because they tried the first referendum, that went down. They waited a couple of years to try to negotiate. The second referendum,
So,
lost that one.
so that's what happens when you get top down. This is we know best approach. You get things that have Jackson Ward still hasn't recovered.
Yeah.
70, 60 years later, and that's what happens when you have that kind of thinking and people that don't listen. So I mean,
Well, that's also part of, we're a Dillon Rule state. For those that don't know, Dillon Rule is.
Judge Dillon.
well, no, the city,
But that's
the city
essentially-
refused. The city voted.
Yeah.
The city leadership refused to accept it, and so they were saying, okay, how do we rip up Jackson Ward? Kick it to the state and let the state decide.
Yeah.
So they just ignored the referendum.
Wow.
Yeah.
And those are the types of decisions that you have that impact the city for decades, and we've had others.
Yeah. Do you think, though, in terms of the Dillon Rule, do you think that is because I feel like a lot of, especially with Morrissey, you have a lot of mayoral candidates who are making promises that really they, some of them can't deliver on because of the fact that this is the Dillon Rule state. You cannot go above what the state legislature
Right.
allows.
Sure.
So do you experience frustration in knowing that there are some promises that you would like to make that you can't make because of the fact that the laws exist the way they do, that there's not home rule here like they have in like a lot of progressive cities like Seattle or Portland?
Not really. I mean, this is campaign, so people are going to make promises they
Yeah.
know they can't possibly keep. And all I can say, and all I do say, is this: I'll do what I can with what we've got, and I will consider working with, state legislators to change those rules. But that's like finding a $20 bill in your pocket when you're doing laundry. It's found money, it's found awesomeness, but to bank on that as a strategy is completely wrong, and it's not fair to the people to expect that you're just going to wave a magic wand and get the state to change the rules. Because if it was that easy, they would have been changed already.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
in a lot of cases, they've tried. They've tried to change
Sorry.
they've tried to change the funding formula
Right.
for schools. They've tried to change a lot of things, and it's not going to happen. So until that is even possible, you have to know that you're going to do whatever you can with what you've got.
I mean, I've been railing against the Dillon Rule for years, privately and publicly, but I would argue that whatever problems the city has, Dillon Rule versus home rule is probably pretty low in terms of what's holding city government back.
I mean, there's certain things. I mean, it's obviously not a litany of issues that it affects. So there's certain things like, I mean, obviously Richmond is affected by marijuana being illegal, and that marijuana decriminalizing something that a mayor can't do. All they can do is tell the sheriff to chill the fuck out.
Yeah,
that's all they can do is just tell them like, hey, could you stop arresting so many people? But there's no law change you can make as a city mayor. But yeah, other than that, it doesn't affect too many issues. But problems like that you can't make.
Yeah. We can't annex ourselves, which is
that was taken away though because
that ends. But I've worked at the General Assembly for a long time, consulting business and so on and so forth. And that I do not. I know a couple of people are talking about that. Because the new ban, because the old ban was extended, is going to end pretty soon. I do not see where our Republican friends in the House and Senate are going to let us go. I don't. I just
you can't even bank on that as strategy.
Yeah, I mean that's.
Yeah.
If it happens,
great.
I
mean, it'd be fantastic.
But if not,
I mean, there's definitely parts of Eastern and Western and Central and Henrico that I think that you could argue should be within city limits, but I don't even think about that
that's
stuff.
what I mean.
It's
Like,
not gonna happen.
that's not going to happen. But again, that's not the problem. Even if you did grow in that way, you still have the issue of needing to work with the counties and needing to figure out regional solutions to economic development and other problems like that. So having that as an out, like trying to annex, trying to grow, you're still going to have that outer realm of counties that are going to need to work together if you want a ballpark, if you want anything.
I think Henrico is signaling a willingness to work on certain things. We're one supervisor seat away from having, I think, a friendly board in Henrico. I don't see Chesterfield really doing much with those anytime soon. They have their own ideas and thoughts and feelings. There's over 400,000 people in Chesterfield. Yeah, that's double our size. So.
I mean, they also run part of GRTC,
which
they own part of it.
Yeah. Blows my mind. That was a lot.
But they don't want us in there. They don't want to stop.
Which is ridiculous because there's 120,000 jobs, that are not serviced by transit. And I'm running for council in the 6th district. 6th district has 3 housing projects in it, 3 courts. And the bus service there to anywhere outside of very certain parts of the city is very poor. I hear about it all the time. When I'm in Hillside or Mosby or Whitcomb, and folks are like, I can't get anywhere. I don't have a car. And they even discontinued the Walmart bus. We used to have a bus that went down to Walmart in the city, and the south side, which is preposterous. But it would be very nice if at least within like a concentric ring, a couple miles into the counties, these sorts of jobs be available.
Whether they wanted it or not, right? And so I work with a nonprofit group up in Ashland called Circles Ashland, and they're trying to work on lifting people out of poverty. And one of the things they're realizing is that the access to jobs is so hard, and there's no bus lines that run up 95 down into the city, and they would love it.
Yeah.
But whether Ashland and the county would love it is another thing, right? Even if it would be good to bring people down to the city who have jobs. I mean, this was always the case. I lived in Atlanta briefly. Whenever extending the public transit lines into certain parts of the city, there were other parts of the city that were very concerned about that, right?
Those people.
Yes, we don't want those people coming in
The
here.
reason why there's no metro stop in Georgetown, in D.C., is they didn't want it. Because they didn't want the undesirables or the lower income people.
Luckily, the authority to place bus stops has been taken away from council.
Thank God.
No offense, I'm sure you
I co-sponsored it.
Yeah.
Oh, I will ask you this question though, because one thing I talked about once was there was like a specific line in the budget when I ran briefly. I went through the budget and I looked through, and there was a specific line that said there was like a plan. It was like bring high-paying jobs to Richmond, and then the section on it and like how to do it was just was like basically blank. They didn't really like, and obviously you were partially involved in that. But I emailed Ellen Robertson and I tried to get a reply and be like, hey, what's the specific plan to bring high-paying jobs to Richmond? And she never replied to me, which is why I'm going to vote for you.
She would have an opponent if she would ever called me back.
Yeah, it was revenge.
Just was trying to get her on the phone. All I wanted was a trash can in my corner, and now it's $20,000. I gotta go win on November. I want a trash can. Hand to God, I want a trash can in my corner. That's all I wanted. And I was like, what the hell with this?
If it was Kathy, you would have gotten it, and then you wouldn't be running, right? That's Kathy's particular genius. Yeah.
So, what's the plan to bring high-paying jobs to Richmond?
Well, I'm not familiar with that one line in the budget.
It's very specific.
But, in general, if you want to attract business, you have to be competitive. You have to be a place where it's easy to start a business. You have to be hopefully, in the long run, a city where the business professional occupational license tax is lower. Right now, we're a lot higher than Henrico, and Charles Samuels has put together a task force that has some kind of a la carte items that we can implement over the course of 4 or 5 years that starts to lower that. Will we ever be as low as Henrico's? Probably not, but if we get in the same neighborhood over the next 5 to 10 years, then we make it even more attractive for people to come and start a business here. And I think that's key, because a lot of those high-paying businesses that I think you're talking about come with a high B-poll tax.
Right.
And lawyers and
Was it 52
high
cents?
finance and
52%, 58%, something like that.
it's more than 52 cents. I think Henrico's is in the 30 range, and
Yeah,
ours
it's-
is in like the
It's
80
high.
range.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
it's a
I
lot
know it's very
higher.
high.
And be able to nickel and dime that down is important, but you have to look at everything. That's why I said, the next mayor is going to have to look at handing off to somebody in 2024 who gets all the credit. Start putting all these little incremental things in place over the next 8 years, and in 8 years we will have a city that people won't even recognize compared to today, which is something like nobody could look at this city 15 years ago and go, wow, Richmond's going to be here in 2016? That's amazing.
Yeah.
And imagine if you had somebody that, I've given this mayor more than my fair share of criticism, and he deserves most of it, but if he had put his nose down and focused as much as I think he should have, or as the next mayor should, then we'd be even further along today than we are. And that's where we need to be in 2024.
So you're going to do all the stuff that he should have done.
I'll do more. I don't want to move. I want to be able to hand the city off in 8 years and enjoy the hell out of it, and really just kick back and relax and say, this is something that I helped as a citizen going back to 2004, 5, 6, 7, as a city staffer from 2008 to 2012, as a city council person, as a mayor, and really make this place as awesome as we all know it can be.
I mean, this is the kind of, why we might worry about some candidates rather than others. The big kahuna, Joe Morrissey. I mean, so there's some people who equate Morrissey to Trump, and they think he will destroy the city. And I think the city is pretty Joe-proof, right? That the problem with Morrissey or anybody that you don't like to be mayor, people who might oppose you, is not that the city is going to go down in flames. It's going to be great. It's still going to be a good place
It'll
to live
survive.
in 4 years.
Yeah.
It's a sort of opportunity cost issue, right? That we could do so much more, and we'll just have 8 more years of the same, which is basically private sector and the nonprofit sector doing great stuff in spite of the city,
all the work,
as opposed to being helped along by.
And that's the real opportunity cost here, is that there's an army of people lined up that aren't maybe currently involved in helping the city that are ready to help
Yeah.
and get behind the right person who leads. And not to take away anything from the churches and the volunteers and the mentors and the people that are in schools and all those other activities that they do, but there's a whole different army out there that is ready to come to bear and help pick the city up and take that next level, because government can't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do so much, but it's going to take engaging even more people than we've got. And if we can do that with the right person, then we're going to get there that much faster.
I certainly think in the next 4 to 6 years, you're going to have to expect the citizenry to do a little more of the heavy lifting, which is unfortunate. But
And they're ready to do it.
They absolutely are. And in fact, without really any prompting whatsoever from, anybody in office or thinking about being in office, groups have already started up. And I think it's important that, this next council and this next mayor continue to encourage that and work as hard as they can with those groups. Because, for instance, I want to bring New York and Chicago's mandatory summer youth jobs program to Richmond. And
I worked
think,
on that many years ago.
Yeah.
Summer Youth Employment Program.
Magnificent program.
Yeah.
It's something that it would actually not even be all that horrifically expensive. It's something we need to keep an eye on because we don't have a great deal of money right now. And probably less to come in the next couple of years. But that would be a wonderful way to tie in a whole bunch of different groups. Anybody can cut grass. So let's pay some 15 and 16-year-olds, $7-8 an hour.
That's what Groundwork RVA is doing.
Oh, I used to be on their board.
Yeah.
I love Groundwork. Gals,
Imagine expanding that to 3-4 times its size.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You take the Mayo Youth Academy, whatever that is, and Groundwork. You put those together. I mean, it'd be tricky because Groundwork is a Fed program, so there's money that's tied there. But there's some loosey-goosiness, and you could expand it over the whole city.
Sure.
And think of what that would do. Of every single vacant lot that needs to be cut, which is X amount of dollars, God willing, 3 times a year. That's really more like 1 now. What if you could eliminate 2 of those X's because it was already being taken over by another program? What if one of the things I want to do is I want to organize all my neighborhoods. Back when I was organize all my individual neighborhoods to both worry about elder care, but also step in for the role of paratransit, which is very expensive for the city, and the grant program's not particularly efficient.
The FAN does this, right? Doesn't the FAN have a group that does something like that?
Does some stuff, I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
My folks in Hillside, they look out for each other.
Yeah.
I know Mr. Reese does a lot of good work, making sure people need to get to go. But also cutting grass, going after graffiti. We're just gonna have to organize within these individual council districts to get these things done, because the city's not doing it now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start doing it.
Yeah.
What about what are you guys' thoughts on the program that was in Albuquerque where they basically would just offer the homeless, I think, $8 or $9 an hour to work on city beautification projects, and they'd give them a shower and food, and pay them for the work and keep them off the streets when they were hustling. Do you guys think that would be a great addition? Because obviously homelessness is a big issue in Richmond.
It's a short-term solution, certainly one that would be, welcome to put a little money in people's pockets. I mean, I still think you're going to need, longer term. I mean, there's a whole group of people in the city, a partnership with homeless and Homeward, and all these folks who are working on the kind of longer-term solutions. Yeah, and that you're still going to need that. But, I think the idea of giving people a little bit of money and maybe solving some of the public works issues would be great. I mean, I kind of feel like those solutions are out there. A little push from some government might help, in terms of organizing, or just someone saying, like, we're in charge here and now we want to hear from folks or to organize it a bit. I also think people will be willing to put up with once or twice a year as opposed to 3 times if they feel like there's a plan in place. Mm-hmm. It's almost like Chicago Cubs fans, right? Or Cleveland Browns fans, like this year versus last year. Like now they at least feel like, well, maybe there's some hope. Who knows? Yeah. These guys actually seem to know what they're doing. We'll take the losing now as opposed to last year, the year before, the 20, 50 years before, because at least I know it might go somewhere. So I feel like people will put up with less services for the short term.
For a couple of years, you could do it for more than 2 or 3, but if everybody's on the same page, the mayor and the council, and you probably need your delegates, it's going to be like, look, it's going to be another couple of years.
Yeah.
We got to reckon with the mistakes of the past, but it's going to get better, and we're all going to do it together.
The thing you got to keep in mind is that people are more willing to accept you making a decision, and if it's the wrong decision, correcting it quickly, as opposed to making no decision, which leads to grass not getting cut, snow not getting plowed, etc. So if you screw up, admit it, fix it, move on. But if you just pretend like everything's hunky-dory and nothing went wrong, then people are like, okay, I'm going to stop listening now to these people because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And they're just throwing me a line of you-know-what. And that's what people don't want. Just be honest with them. If you screw up, admit it, move on quickly.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
So, if you say, okay, we're going to try this snow plowing method, and the plan doesn't work, okay, we learned it. We're going to move on. We're going to do it better next time. We promise. And the next time, just don't do the same thing that you did last time.
Right.
Make sure it's different. Make sure it works, or at least it works better than the last time.
Yeah.
And people will accept it. If they see progress, then they buy into it. And the more they buy into it, the more they're going to be comfortable with the decisions that are being made, as opposed to being, all right, I'm done with these fools.
Right.
I just don't want it anymore.
I feel like you are, John. You're the guy in the romantic comedy who's always been there on the side, always been there.
I have been there.
Willing to listen to help, whenever needed. Not as flashy or as crazy as the other ones, but always there when we need you.
Yep.
People need to come around and realize that you don't have the showmanship or the money
Definitely don't have the money.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
Some of the other ones too. But you've always been there. You've always been on the right side of the argument. You've always been against the stupid stuff that the city council's done over the last 8 years.
I'm a straight shooter. People that know me know that, and we'll see what happens in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I got to get going.
All right. More importantly, tomorrow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
John, pleasure.
John, it's been a pleasure.
I'm going to try.
Yeah.
You want a refill?
Yeah, I get a little something.
Sure. Grab your cup here.
I like to get the bucket of ice. Yeah. John, I mean, I was really surprised by the poll because it seems like he's been doing really well in these forums. Like every time I read about the forums.
I did interviews after the debates, or after the mayorathon.
Oh yeah, I
Everyone
remember
was
seeing
saying,
those.
like,
Yeah.
the person I thought about, that I wasn't thinking of before was John.
Yeah.
And when you got 3 people from the debate saying I'd have John in my office, it's usually a good sign.
Yeah.
When they're saying if I'm going to be mayor, I want John in my office, and people are saying, well, if they're going to want John in the office, why don't they just
vote for him?
Yeah, but get John as mayor. It'd be much better.
I don't understand. Yeah.
I'm going to do a brief plug here, just because that's one day I'd like this company to sponsor me, but let's see. All right. So this is Blue Chair Bay, coconut spice rum cream. You can't buy it in Virginia anymore. They recently discontinued it. I searched far and wide, and thanks to the help of the Blue Chair Bay Facebook team, I was able to locate this while I was in Buffalo this week and buy 7 bottles of it. So if you ever get a chance, you see this outside the state of Virginia, buy it. It's good shit. It's great pineapple juice. You mix it with coffee liquor. Tastes like a coconut coffee creams. Good shit.
You just walked through a commercial.
I did.
It's okay, but do you want to talk at all about your race with Ellen?
Oh, sure. Actually,
So how's that going?
it's going
I
shockingly
mean,
well.
you made you obviously made headlines when you were, she as the incumbent wasn't endorsed by the Richmond. I mean, we don't know how much value the Democratic
Endorsement?
Committee
Oh, it's
carries,
massive.
but
Yes, but she's still the official Democratic
got that email
candidate.
too?
Yeah, whatever it
Yeah,
was. She
that was a
said
good one.
she came out and said something like, "I'm the official Democratic candidate."
she endorsed herself.
So say basically, yeah.
She thanked us all for voting in a poll, which none of us had voted in. It's like, okay. I'll go on the record happily and say I like Ellen personally a great deal.
Yeah.
I really didn't have any problem with what she'd been doing. I thought she was a little hard to get a hold of.
I mean, that's what you were talking about earlier.
The trash can, yeah.
That's why.
Look,
Yeah.
I founded and ran the Richmond Downtown Residents Association. My wife and I lived on 5th and Grace, and there was still a great deal of petty crime and extracurricular murders. The building right next to it, 2 guys were killed in 2012. And
Was it the Brayburg? Or?
no, literally right next door, the Broad City Apartments.
Yes.
And in the parking lot, there was a lot of crime. I fell in love with boring things like sewers and police pay and arts funding at a very young age. I was a very boring child, and so we started that, and we invited Ellen down, and she wouldn't come for ages, and finally she did. And so I was like, okay. We had this really cool plan. What we wanted to do is, with her help, and also with the mayor, we wanted to do a downtown parking survey, right? Because there's a great deal of loading or no parking or 30-minute parking down here that no longer fits. That warehouse is long gone. That restaurant's not there anymore.
Right.
And you're probably talking 8, maybe 9 new parking spots. But down here, especially with the growth that we were all starting to guess was going to come, that is a lot of extra parking. You're talking about 40, 50 more cars a day, right? Which we desperately need. And she just dismissed us immediately. This was 2013. I thought, okay, well that's not good. Then the baseball stadium, I was already happy about the Redskins vote, and I bought a house in Barton Heights on Barton and Battery. My wife fell in love with it, so we bought it. There are 2 corner stores. And I served on the Clean City Commission for a number of years, and beautification is something I'm pretty into, and there are no trash cans. There used to be trash cans along the major commercial corridors on the north side, but the city took them out about 10 years ago. And I had actually no idea why. And so I called Ellen's office several times. I was like, we need a trash can on the corner. And the thing about it, litter occurs because people don't have anywhere to put the trash.
Right.
It is perfectly reasonable to buy a Twix, eat the Twix, and think, well, I don't really need this greasy chocolate wrapper anymore. And there's nowhere to put it. Almost everyone would throw it in the street. That's just the going on, which is why we have trash cans. And we don't have one, both those, Dove and Barton, a lot of foot traffic. And there's nowhere to put the trash. It's like blowing in my roses, and I'm just really could not get on the phone. I was, this is absolutely 100% how I became a candidate for city council. I was sitting on my front porch with a couple of friends of mine on Sunday. We were watching the 4:30 game, and I said, I'm so damn mad about these trash cans. And everybody said, you've been talking about these trash cans 4 months. Why don't you just run for office? And I said, I will. All right, I will run for office.
And then did you crush a beer can on your head afterwards?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I've never been able to do that.
I feel like Ellen specifically has just gotten too comfortable. I feel like that's part of her issue. I mean, like I said, I sent that email and I said, hey, this, page 132 of the budget has the high-paying jobs thing with no plans. It was a very simple question, and I just obviously someone who hadn't really gotten involved in politics too much at that point, I was just expecting something, basic like a customer service or email that said, hey, love to, just a basic reply, even an automated reply would have been nice. But I sat there for 4 weeks and got nothing. And then I was like, and I started talking to you, I can get a hold of you whenever I want. That's how it's going to keep going. I think maybe he just needs a fresh new face. Maybe he just needs someone that actually cares. He realizes that you're not going to get this job every year. I mean, she's run how many years unopposed?
13 straight years without any real opposition. Actually, she beat Lawrence Williams in 2003, 40-1.
Yeah.
Well, Lawrence Williams.
I think Lawrence personally a great deal. He can, Lawrence is his ass off and carries him over, which is not here nor there. I actually think he wouldn't have. I actually think any of them would not be pretty right there. But the problem with council, the problem with being a council person, is that the job is 70% constituent relations and 30% land use law. And finding someone who is interested in both of those things, that's hard. And we have people really good at one and not the other, and vice versa. And I'm lucky that I went to VCU, so Randolph Macon's a great college.
Yeah.
Could not afford it. And
we have very attractive financial aid packages.
I'm getting a master's degree.
There we go.
We don't have master's programs, sorry. No.
My background in public policy. I started out with Home, actually Barry Hardin's wife. Helen gave my very first internship and exposed me to the wide world of discrimination in housing, which was something I had no idea even occurred when I was 21 years old. I was like, oh wait, people can't just buy houses. Did not believe it. And then you see it firsthand. What this city needs from its council people, from its mayor, is someone who's really interested in answering letters and picking up the phone.
Yeah.
And being yelled at about how the trash hasn't been picked up. Because it's just unpleasant. And I remember right before I turned my paperwork in, you'll get this as a theorist, I was being an active citizen. I was at one of my opponent's town halls at Overby Shepherd, and she was letting us all know that it was unlikely the roof was going to get fixed, but she's going to try and get the roof fixed. The roof's $150,000 to get fixed. It'll be for years, but it's difficult to get money for things, and that's actually nowhere her fault that it took as long as it did because it's part of the larger budget. But we were sitting there, and there's about 40 of us in the auditorium, and they were screaming at her. I mean, just zero tolerance, go to hell. This school's a mess. These roads are a mess. All this stuff. And I was sitting there, and I was like, man, it's really that's a shame. I certainly want to win. I don't want Helen to win. I want myself to win. But I have great sympathy for anyone that does the job.
Yeah.
And my wife looked over at me and she said, "You really want to do this?" And there was a moment there I wavered. I was like, this actually doesn't look like very much fun at all. I realized it's because Ellen holds 2 meetings a year. And so everybody's just been getting madder and madder and madder about that pothole on the corner. You know what I'm talking about. Why don't they fix it? They show up and they lose it. And which is perfectly reasonable. People get, why is the pothole on?
So how many meetings will you have a year?
I'm going to have 2-3 a week.
Nice.
Yeah, in fact,
You're like a mayoral forum.
Yeah.
That's how you do it, so nobody shows up. You get that one person and be like,
I can always get all of that guy.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it rotating. I have 9 precincts, and every single one of them has a place where I can sit. And so what we're gonna do is probably 2 days a week I'll hold office hours in a particular precinct, and we'll just rotate through all of them. Because it's hard to get down to City Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big problem that a lot of, especially lower income residents, the public transit's bad and parking even then is annoying. You got to pay for, to get out there.
But that's why you're just saying having a good staff person, a good liaison who can answer the phone and will say yes and be able to, you know this from working for.
And don't cohabitate with them like Michelle Mosby did. That's an important part of the job.
To be fair, I like his guy a great deal. He's actually an excellent council liaison, but it didn't look good.
Yeah.
I've been teasing about it for ages. I was like, come on, man.
Let's get an apartment next door.
Yeah.
There's plenty of rental down there.
Yeah.
One of the problems we have, and I'd really like to hear your opinions on this, we have this horrific breakdown in civic expectations in this country. And part of it is because it is so difficult to be a politician, an elected official, and actually speak to anyone. You know, because you're always being recorded. You know, you're always.
Yeah.
I'm talking more about like the federal level.
Yeah.
You know, there's always gotcha moments. You know, there's always the hot button issues. You know, so I mean, when you talk to your kids about this, you know, what do you guys talk about?
Well, I don't know what we talk about. I think that at the state and the local level, you actually do have. I mean, I don't think that that's actually the case. Like, I think the breakdown comes from the overall narrative presented by the Republican Party about government. I don't think actually people's experiences with government are generally pretty positive. And what?
Oh, I mean, I definitely like that's something that's been very weird for me is that I grew up as little, and I try to eliminate it much as I can, but I grew up as a Republican, and there's still a little bit inside me that likes to blame people for their own problems and. You know, I try to like
the best episode you've ever
I like to,
I try, and I try to suppress it, but there's just a little, that still is that right wing inside me that, comes out every once in a while. But, it's difficult as I just had such a good experience with the government. I mean, other than trying to contact Ellen Robertson, but when I ran for mayor, like the registrar's office was so nice. I mean, the head registrar was a little abrasive, but everyone who worked in the office was very nice and very, very understanding. You know, it was very easy to get a hold of someone. Whenever I called City Hall, they always have an answer to a question. They weren't always, necessarily like, Ritz-Carlton front desk team or something, and they weren't super cordial, but they had the answers, and it was pretty easy to get a hold of people. So that was weird when I grew up in this conservative household and I see this contempt for government, and then all my experiences with government I have not had a difficult time. In DMV, you wait sometimes, but you fix all your shit. Especially like now they have online apps, you can get all your registration done and get your license. Get a new address. It takes 5 minutes.
It's like the overall ideology is government is a problem, and people kind of buy into it, and then they remember the horrible experiences, but they forget all these other things that they've been doing.
Stuff that goes through so easily.
Yeah, I mean, the famous thing about the Tea Party was the woman who was like, "Get your government hands off my Medicare," right? And that was symptomatic. Obviously, most people are a little smarter than that, but that was the kind of thing. It's just they had filed away all this good stuff as, well, that's not government. That's just, my friend Donald, he works he's a city councilman, but that's not government. That's my friend Donald. Like, they just file it away.
Yeah.
I actually think in this city, we have a problem with those experiences. Like you said, the press office being not being good in the city, the council people who are not good at community relations or getting into the constituents.
Sadly, a number. I won't name names, but they're
and then,
what do you do all day? Get off the phones.
Yeah, and then the other thing is just the divide in the city. I mean, we talked about this too, right? The red line in the city, the one that Morrissey particularly has been so good at talking about. Whether he's going to do anything about it is one thing, but he's the one who says there's two Richmonds, right? There's the white Richmond and the black Richmond. There's the poor and the rich. There's the East End, the West End, and I'm going to be there for the people on the wrong side of that divide. And the problem is that I think the city, we don't have good ways of communicating through that. Someone like Jon, well-meaning, really smart, and somebody who's good, I don't know if he's able, and I don't even think through any fault of his own, I don't think he's able to speak to half the people in the city. Like, I don't know if they're hearing him.
No, that's the problem.
Right?
I did a show with Kevin Starling that I can't release, unfortunately, but I did a show with Kevin Starling.
Knowing Kevin, I'm not.
I did a show with him, and he talked about, he asked, like, where is Jon? I haven't seen him in my district. But I mean, that just comes down. That is, for some people, that is all that matters. Has he come to my neighborhood? Has he come to my house?
It is an article of faith among all Democratic Party organizers, which I was on for many years, that if you shake someone's hand, they will vote for you.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly. And I have seen it bear out. I mean, it's not anything I would really put a number to, but if I talk to 10 people and I shake all of their hands, 5 or 6, certainly. Because you asked for the vote, and it means a lot.
Yeah.
It still means a lot to me. Like, I've been inside the game for years, but I met Hillary, she shook my hand, she's like, I hope you go. Of course. Oh my God, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
You know,
But you're not going to vote for Mike Pence if he shakes your hand.
Yeah.
Right, there's limits to it, right?
Yeah.
There's limits to it. There's limits.
Well, I mean, there's no such thing as a swing vote. That's preposterous. It has to be one of those years. You talk about 1 out of every 100 maybe at best.
Yeah. But you know, I just feel like there's this disconnect in the city between I don't think it's just race, right? Because race is too simplistic.
I don't think it is.
But it's also about like different institutions. And I mean, you see this in southern cities, and being an outsider to a southern city, and having lived in Atlanta for a little bit, I know too. The city is still segregated. It's very much segregated.
Oh my good Lord,
There's a black middle class, but they don't hang out in the same place as the white middle
Go to a
class.
restaurant and look at who's around you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, especially like, even just like
always,
for nightlife as young people, there's black clubs, there's white clubs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's still, and you know, the white people don't go to the black clubs.
Yeah.
You know, and you might see 5 of them there, but the rest of them are at the white club.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's just like, and even that, I mean, I'll admit it's like a stigma. Like there are people, all my friends who just, we don't go there.
Yeah.
We don't go there because it's a black club. It's just a different,
it's a
different
whole
lifestyle.
lifestyle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and you know, so the city segregates itself. You know, just kind of naturally.
Very naturally.
We had this
exactly.
problem in our neighborhood. You know, I live in the south side, Westover Hills, and then Forest Hill runs right through it. And on one side is kind of our wealthier, middle class white neighborhood, and on the other is a more mixed, kind of more working class neighborhood. And that's where the elementary school is. And so there's an activist in our neighborhood, Bryce Lyle, who went around asking people like, hey, have you been over to the school? I'm like, no, it's a terrible school, like it's public school. Like, no, have you been over to the school? Like, have you actually just walked over there and looked at it?
Yeah.
Have you gone in and met anybody? Have you been to the playground, the brand new playground they just built there? And it just, people, even myself, I was like, you know, I take my kids to half the playgrounds in the city and we've never walked across the street. It's a big road and whatever, it's traffic, but we just never did it. And so then we finally started doing it, and Bryce was right. I mean, it's not a bad school, great playground, and it just takes some time, someone to ask the question to kind of start connecting people up in that way.
Yeah, Richmond is, you know, I love Richmond above all things except for my wife. But
You're being recorded now, so you can say that.
Well, you know, I was with her the other day. I told a very famous story that my family, my mother-in-law, on the day of our wedding said, "Well, you know, Korean, the only problem is they'll never love you more than you love her." But you know, one of the things I have always been really irritated with in Richmond is how easily we accept certain narratives and rules. And that's an excellent one. And when I first came here, I was very guilty of it myself. You know, there's certain points I didn't go to.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the don't cross the river, you know, mentality
Right,
you have as a
right.
as a student, especially as a young person. I don't want to live in Manchester.
To change the
You
moat.
don't-
Yeah.
you stay across, you stay on this side of the river.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And as someone who's, God willing, going to represent a very large swath of Southside and some parts that I think a lot of people might not be so interested in going to, they're actually perfectly fine. You know, I've part of the garden, I've got Oakwell, I've got Oak Grove, I've got Blackwell, you know, I've got Hillside, and I mean, I love it. I really did. Talk about some real folk, man. People just getting on with their lives.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to, because as you know, as a white guy who's running to represent a majority black district, you know, I'm always very careful, you know, to not be any more arrogant ass than I usually am. But yeah, no, that's a joke. That's a joke. You know, I spent a great deal of time in courts, 3 housing courts, you know, and I'm always amazed, because you hear things. And even my group of friends is pretty liberal, pretty tolerant. You can hear, I hesitate to use the term microaggressions, but it does catch the ear. There's certain verbiages, certain ways of describing things, and I think, you know, I spent 7.5 hours in Whitcomb yesterday. You don't even know what the fuck you are talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, there's code areas you don't go to.
Like
Yeah.
describe 1,000 people and put them right out of your mind.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got first of all, you have no right to do it. And not to get on my social justice warrior event, which I can totally rant for a good like just on that alone. You know, and I'll close with this because I really do want you to cigarette and 2 need to get out of here. But I was knocking doors. I was in Wickham, and it was getting dark, and I was with my interns, a young black fella. I know it was incredible. I have the best intern team in East Kitchen. God, they do the work. They're gonna help me. If I win, it's because of them. And I just come around the corner, and there was a bunch of guys, and I'll put it this way. They looked like they should have been in a rap video. You know, most kids, you know,
Right.
and they're all probably at best 18, right? And they're kids. But a lot of them are very loud, you know, and they all, you know, they looked quote unquote gangster or whatever. And you know, my intern looked at me and said, like, maybe we should go the other way. And I was like, no, this is totally fine. Don't even begin to worry about this. We go out and everybody said, hey, how you doing? We walk right by each other.
Yeah.
You know, not even a moment. And I think that what this city needs is not just a council person, but most importantly a mayor, and most importantly a shift in attitude. Where we need to absolutely look at each other across this bright red line of Forest Hill, of North Avenue, you know, of Hillside Court, and just get over this shit.
Yeah.
Because it's killing us. It is killing us. Because the power structures in the West End, and you know the people who live in Houston and Palatine and own the majority of the city and spend a great deal of money, they have no sympathy whatsoever for any of this, you know, and it is distressing because all this could have been solved a long time ago. But it hasn't been because you don't go to that playground.
Yep.
You know, you don't go to that part of town. That's where they live.
Yeah.
If it was said with this, we all know damn good and well what it is.
We know who they is.
Yeah.
We just don't say it.
Because we're polite gentlemen, of course. But, you know, it's infuriating, and these are the people, you know, I believe 100% with a great line Bobby Kennedy, who's non-political here, you know, the three of us especially have been born into this country to know virtues or accomplishments of our own in the most comfortable of conditions. And we have a duty to those who are less well off. And that is why I'm running for city council.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cannot stand to see anyone doomed because of where they were born.
Yeah.
That is the opposite of America.
The natural lottery.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? The natural order. That's well put.
It's John Rawls' theory of justice. It's political theory for you. Boom! Drop the mic.
I should have paid more attention. I think I have a political theory degree, but
Should have said it right off making, man.
Yeah, you learned that stuff.
Real talk.
It came up to me.
Yeah, I got my VCU degree for half what that was.
Listen, let's get back and talk about it. Thanks for watching, and have a great night.